And welcome back to another monthly episode of Unpacking Endpoint Management. I'm your co-host, Steve Thomas, and with me, as always, my partner in crime, my TV sidekick, Danny Guillory. How are you, Danny?
What's up, Steve? I was wondering what the delay was there. I wondered if you were going to say something or if I had to beat you to it.
Now, for today's show, we're going to be diving into uncharted territory. So before I introduce our guests, a quick disclaimer is warranted. While the content matter in today's show may discuss legal and potentially regulatory issues, it is important to disclose that neither the host or any of the guests or any of the production staff are legal professionals and that the discussions and content of today's show do not represent nor constitute as legal advice. When in doubt of processes and procedures, always reach out to your organization's representatives of legal counsel and follow all proper guidelines and processes as established by your employer and or organization. We at Unpacking Endpoint Management are aware that this is a global show with global reach and must stress that procedures, regulations, and guidelines may vary in your respective jurisdictions. Now, with that out of the way, we have two very special guests today. We have Bhavana, we call her BB, from the Microsoft State and Local Governments Organization. She is a Purview Technical Compliance Specialist. And then we have with us from the Purview product team, we have David Robbins. Good to have you folks here.
And hello.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So let's just get right down to it, the actual title of the episode. Why would an IT pro get a subpoena?
So it's always kind of a fun subject, subpoenas. Unfortunately, as some people might be aware of, there are lots of different reasons why you might receive a subpoena. That includes most commonly and most fearfully legal matters investigations. Subpoenas are often issued as part of a legal matter, or if there's an investigation, they want to see organizations, an organization's activities, might be related to data breach or regulatory or compliance issues. And often it falls on administrators that have access to the data to actually be the one to collect the data to provide to the requester. This could be a third party. So this could be a subpoena that's issued by, say, a law enforcement agency or another, agency that's in having a legal matter with, your company. And like I said earlier, often this really comes down to different IT professionals to collect the information that's relevant to this. And that's generally because, it's the IT managers, the IT administrators that have access to the sensitive data. That's usually part of the subpoena. And there are situations where, you might have to retain this data for this legal purpose. We'll maybe have a chance to talk about that later on. Another reason that unfortunately is becoming more common is in case of a security incident where there's been a security breach, a compromised account, cyber attack. That's another reason why we might have data that's requested. Often these requests will come in as a part of a compliance audit, or maybe in an internal investigation involving employee misconduct. So there's a lot of different reasons why an organization has to respond to a subpoena. And we might get into some more details about that later on as well.
It definitely scares me sometimes. We all have nightmares. We all have dreams sometimes about being stuck in court and you're on the stand and they're like, state your name, Stephen Thomas. And then we wake up and everything was just a dream. Thank you.
Most of the time. I'm completely just dumbfounded here because I have no clue about this topic, nor would I even admit to having any knowledge of this topic at all. But this is absolutely hilarious. So, question, do we have tools to help us do this stuff? I'm probably going to ask the most dumbest questions in the world, but so audience, feel free to ask questions because I'm probably going to top you with the dumb ones. But I don't even know, do we have tools to help with this stuff? I'm asking the people, not you, Steve, because I don't know, what do we have to help people?
We're not the experts here. That's why we brought these folks on today. So,
yeah, I can take that one.
Sure.
For discovering emails, documents in SharePoint, OneDrive for Business, Teams conversations that might be produced in these illegal investigations. we provide e-discovery solutions within Microsoft Purview Compliance Portal. So we provide e-discovery standard as well as e-discovery premium capabilities. So e-discovery standard enables you to do basic e-discovery functions like creating cases, running searches, search queries. Then you can collect the data, you can put the content on legal hold, and then you can export the data and produce it to the legal team or the records request team. And then e-discovery premium provides all the capabilities of e-discovery standard. And on top of that, it also provides advanced capabilities to support custodian management or processing of information or reviewing the data and your analytics needs. So this review stage that I'm talking about in e-discovery is like a manual and most time-consuming process for a lot of organizations. And it's also like a costly process for a lot of organizations. So e-discovery premium will help with the initial review stage, and it helps to cull the data intelligently. So yeah, you can use e-discovery standard and e-discovery premium, and you can discover the information that is required to be produced.
So when you say e-discovery, you're basically saying the cloud-based digital version of a whole bunch of paralegals in a room full of gigantic piles of boxes going through stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because as a part of the investigation, you might have to produce various types of content within the organization, right? So for that, you require a tool, and we usually refer that tool as e-discovery solution. E-discovery is also referred to as electronic discovery.
And it can discover everything, like hypothetically speaking, even Steve and Danny's chat messages between each other.
Even to the point where if you put a little smiley face on a chat message, we can even return that too. So, yeah, you know, just as BB was saying, the digital estate in Microsoft 365 alone is massive. You know, we're not just talking about email anymore. We're not just talking about SharePoint files. There's Yammer, there's Teams, Planner, Loop, Exchange email still. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, just in the content that's in Microsoft 365. And just as BB was saying, you know, e-discovery and e-discovery premium are our tool set for basically finding that information that lives in the cloud, taking it, reviewing it, which is, you know, a very costly process for our customers, and putting it into a format that we can turn over to legal, to, you know, the requester of a subpoena, whoever it is. So, you know, it's a one way that we have to basically shift through or sift through this massive amount of content we have in the cloud and find that little needle in a haystack that is important for a subpoena or any other kind of digital request.
All right, so I got tons of questions just for my dumb self, but we do have a question from the audience. So if documents, records, policies, and emails are being requested in our Office 365 tenant, what would I need to be able to search and find a specific item? Whoever wants to take it.
Like what would, I mean, let's say I have E3 or G3, for example. What would I have available to me with just that?
So,
Yeah.
BB, you want this one, or I can take it?
Yeah, I can take it. So, Steve, e-discovery standard is available within the Microsoft 365 G3 licenses, and e-discovery premium capabilities are available within GPI or the GPI compliance or the GPI e-discovery and audit licenses. And if the end users have the appropriate licenses, you can use one of these solutions accordingly. So e-discovery standard, like I said, it's a solution that helps you search the content, put the content on hold, and export the content, whereas e-discovery premium provides a lot of additional capabilities. It helps you cull your data and then streamline your e-discovery processes.
Okay, so one is kind of basic in terms of like searching, and the advanced capabilities provide more intelligence and more features to kind of help streamline and optimize that. Okay.
Yeah. So, there's different ways of running a search in eDiscovery. One is you can get really narrow in what you're looking for. So if you're looking for a particular document or a conversation between Steve and myself, you have that capability. Or you have the capability to basically cast what you might say is like a bigger net, to where you're going to catch more information or documents or emails than you actually need. And then you can use a tool like eDiscovery Premium to kind of go through all that content you pulled, even though it's a lot more than you really needed, and find those specific items in that big amount of data that you've collected. So, like I said, you can get really specific and find that particular needle that you're looking for, or you can just pull in the whole haystack and then kind of shift through it manually.
So who should be doing this? Because if Steve Thomas, if I'm just some IT pro working for an organization, and unfortunately I'm the one that just unfortunately happened to answer the door and get hit with the subpoena by the process server, I'm going to be treating this like a hot potato. I'm going to be like, who can I give this to? So who should be doing this within an organization? What kind of what officers? I don't think I should be doing this as an IT.
I definitely think you should be doing this.
All right, Steve, you got your answer. That's it. You got to do it.
I would love to tell you that there's a single answer to that question, but it really depends on, one, the size of the customer, two, the industry. It varies based on the industry. For example, a federal customer might have a very different process than a manufacturing customer. And it really just depends on the customer itself. Often it's very common for a customer to have a team that's dedicated to this process. And depending on the size of the organization, they could have a lot of people that are just doing eDiscovery searches every single day. That's very common. Team 50 people that all they do is eDiscovery searches. But smaller companies, it might be rolled into part of for example, the Exchange group, where you have an Exchange admin running a search for email content as part of, offshoot of what their duties are. So it could also be rolled into security teams, for example. Some customers have security teams that also do eDiscovery collections. Most commonly for our larger customers, though, they have a team that's dedicated to doing eDiscovery searches. They also might have a separate team that's dedicated to do privacy-related searches. So if you're talking about some of the, regulations like GDPR that involve you basically running digital subject request searches, they'll have a privacy team that's responsible for running those type of searches too. So I would love to say that it's the same across every single customer, but there's a lot of variation there. And we're finding more and more that customers are having dedicated teams responsible for eDiscovery.
So since you went into the GDPR piece, how does the end user privacy intersect or not intersect here? Like what are the challenges? So let's take a shovel and dig into that just for a little bit.
Yeah, it's a hot topic. And it, was originally, I guess, in the pre-GDPR days, wasn't something that came up very much. But now I'm having talks about this weekly. And that is, there are different regulations like GDPR. It's not the only one, although it's probably the most famous one, I would say. Right. Where basically you have situations where customers have to go and find their users' private information. Because with things like GDPR, a user has the right to know what private information the company has. So they can actually have a request, basically similar to a subpoena, where you have to basically provide all the personal and private information that you have about a particular end user. These requests are growing exponentially to, the right of access, which is you have the right to know what personal information the organization has about you. You also have the right to be forgotten. And this is a very hot topic nowadays, where not only can you see what personal information a company has about you, you can also make a request to have that content deleted. And eDiscovery has a big role there. We have a lot of customers that are using e-discovery to target that personal and private information. But in Purview, we actually have a dedicated tool set to these type of requests. I don't know if you all have heard of Priva, but we do have a privacy solution that's built around these type of privacy requests that specialize in finding that information. So you have the ability to run these DSR searches to find that particular data and take action to remove it as part of right to be forgotten. So privacy is an incredibly fast growing area when it comes into the world of e-discovery and privacy. And luckily we do have great tools in Microsoft Purview to actually help customers find that private information and remediate it.
So, all right, I had a question, but I see another one just came in. So let me get this question. A valuable component of e-discovery standard is the ability to delegate legal counsel to discovery and export that info. But on-prem data doesn't appear to be accessible by Purview. Any suggestions?
So that's a tricky one. Kind of what we mentioned earlier, e-discovery and e-discovery premium are really tools that are focusing on collecting content, searching content in Microsoft 365. But obviously that's not where all your data is stored. One of the big value adds of e-discovery premium is you do have the ability to import what we call non-Office 365 data. So if you have data that's not in the cloud, that is still part of your case, this legal matter that we were talking about earlier, you can actually take that content and put it into an e-discovery case where you can run searches against it. You can then, refine it, find the information that you're looking for and export it. So while we do not give you the full ability to basically search, for example, on-premise Exchange or other data repositories, we do allow you to bring that content into e-discovery premium where you can run additional searches. Unfortunately, this is not something that we can do in standard, but it is a great value add of e-discovery premium.
BB, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I think David covered most of it, right? Because e-discovery premium allows you to do this particular thing where you can get in the content from your on-prem repositories. So there's a non-Office 365 load set. You can scan that content wherever, like in your on-prem file share, and then you can put that into the review set, and then you can perform your investigation. So yeah, you definitely need e-discovery premium to do that, and the feature is not available with an e-discovery standard.
I don't mean to harp on this again, but let's go revisiting delegation again. Okay, so I'm an IT, I'm a global admin, let's say, and I've gotten the subpoena. And for so many reasons, mostly post-traumatic, hypothetically speaking, let's say I've had like 3 or 4 divorces and I just don't feel like dealing with subpoenas. And Danny, let's say I've retained Danny as my counsel, or my org has retained Danny. How can I throw Danny under? I mean, how can I delegate the responsibilities of e-discovery and e-discovery alone to Danny?
Yeah, I can take that up. So yeah, e-discovery case management is not purely an IT admin or a global admin responsibility, right? So like David mentioned, there could be like multiple stakeholders that are associated with an e-discovery case. So in fact, Microsoft provides granular e-discovery related role-based access control in the compliance portal. So multiple people can collaborate on a case. So for example, e-discovery manager can create an e-discovery case. Then the IT admin can run the searches for collecting the case data. Then legal folks or the records team in the state and from the review set. In fact, recently we also introduced a capability where you can invite external attorneys and provide them guest access to the e-discovery premium cases so that they can review the contents of a review set. So yeah, our Microsoft Purview compliance portal provides these granular RBAC permissions so that you can invite multiple stakeholders to collaborate on an e-discovery case.
By the way, the irony of those sirens in the background is not lost on me. especially given the subject matter today.
All right, so I'll ask one of my questions that I put in the chat because I think this may apply more to small business than big business. But how much do customers realize? How much of this is a surprise? Like what they have access to, what they don't have access to. Like, I mean, there's a lot of customers obviously use Intune, a lot of our other 365 services. But when you get a subpoena, do you guys wind up finding that customers don't even realize what they have access to actually help facilitate whatever they're being asked by the subpoena? BB, I'll let you go first. Oh, sorry, Dave. Whoever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, surprise in the sense that the global administrator can basically assign the permissions, right? Because e-discovery is like a privileged access, right? So there are certain prerequisites that need to be put into place. People need to have appropriate role-based access so that they can start searching the content. And the good news here is that Microsoft e-discovery, it's an in-place tool. So you don't have to set up anything on a server, or you don't have to install anything on the end user's machine, right? So it's all available, ready, in place. And if proper permissions have been assigned, people can start searching the content and they can start working on the case right away. David, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, that's great summary. One thing of note here, e-discovery is considered to be one of the highest level permissions in all of Microsoft 365. I mean, it gives you the ability to see all the data in an entire organization. And for that reason, even global administrators do not have access to e-discovery. So a global administrator can't even go into an e-discovery case and run a search and pull content. They require a special permission, which BB mentioned earlier, e-discovery administrator or e-discovery manager. And that creates a great little audit trail because you know exactly, who has access to this. It is really important because you don't want a situation where a rogue global admin can go in there and basically run a search, pull a whole bunch of content out. It requires a very special permission set. And on top of that, we're making sure that all this activity is audited. We know who's accessing cases. We know what they're doing in the case. So there's a lot of security around having that ability to run the e-discovery search because, like I said, it's an incredibly powerful tool. So you don't even have to worry about a global admin going in there and running searches without that special permission set.
Right. Also, I'd like to add one more point here. This is like a question that I get a lot from our state and local government customers and also our large customers, right? So they ask us, hey, how about, people seeing what they are supposed to see? I mean, even when it comes to the e-discovery managers, what if the e-discovery manager wants to be able to see the content only within a specific agency or a specific department? So we also provide the capabilities to set up compliance boundaries so that you can limit the search for e-discovery managers so that they can search content only within their agency or a department.
That's a great call out. And you can base that on geolocation. So you can only run a search across content that's in your country. You can make it by department to where you can only see, for example, the accounting information versus, sales information. So with those compliance boundaries, it's a really great way of making sure that there is that separation of what a user has access to search. So that's a really good call out.
Good one. Looks like we got another question. How do we stop rogue admins and users from covering their tracks, destroying data and evidence?
Ooh, that's a fun subject.
They exist.
We don't like to think that this happens, but it does.
No way.
And it's always fun when you catch someone, red-handed doing this. So we talked earlier kind of about some of the things we have in place to keep admins from going rogue. So once again, this requires a very elevated permission set. So it's not an Exchange admin that can go in there and do this or a SharePoint admin. It does require special permissions that are set through Purview. And once again, even global admins can't go in there and do this without basically being part of this group. So we have a great audit trail. We can see who's been added. We can even be notified when searches are ran. And we can also see the activity that's going on in the actual e-discovery case, because it's all being audited. Now, there's some other more interesting things that happen on the side of how do we prevent a user from being up to no good. And that is done through different methods. The number one most common one is what we call legal holds, or in this case, we're talking about an e-discovery hold. That is something that you can apply to a user, which is, we talked about earlier about custodian, but really kind of that's what it is in e-discovery lingo. Is basically a custodian is a user or this person who's responsible for the data you're looking for. And you have the ability to place them on hold. Now, that hold can be one of two things. It can be silent, which means that the user isn't aware that they've been placed on hold. So basically you said, hey, we're doing an investigation. We see Steve is really up to no good. And as part of that, we don't want Steve covering his tracks. So what we're going to do is we are going to put all those accounts on hold. And what that means is while Steve might think that this content's being deleted, so, hey, I know that I'm under investigation now. I'm going to delete everything that's relevant to this case. And while it looks like Steve has successfully deleted all this information, in reality, because Steve's account's on hold, we're still able to search all that information, and nothing will be permanently deleted until that hold is released. So while it doesn't really cause any interruption in your day-to-day workflow, you're out there in Exchange land, deleting emails or SharePoint, deleting documents. It looks like it's gone, but as long as that location is on hold, we're going to make sure that we keep that information. So even though you're trying to cover your tracks, you're deleting all this thing that's relevant to this investigation, thinking you're being sneaky, we're going to hold it all. And we're going to use it against you later on because we're able to still search for that content.
Foiled again.
Steve, those 10 emails I just deleted, they're not really gone, evidently.
Yeah, sorry about that. Another thing also, kind of go back into the admin world, these holds are really powerful. So even if a rogue Exchange admin tries to delete a mailbox, trying to hide the contents, for an investigation, an e-discovery hold will protect that mailbox from being permanently deleted. So even the mailbox that you think that you're deleting and trying to cover your tracks, we're still going to hold that mailbox as long as that legal hold is in place. So while it looks like the mailbox is permanently deleted, it's really in an inactive state and can be recovered and also searchable. So you can still pull all that conversation history. So it even prevents a rogue admin from permanently deleting a mailbox or a OneDrive site or a SharePoint site as long as this legal hold's in place. So very powerful tool. Great way to make sure that you still have the information that you're looking for, even if someone tries to maliciously delete it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And to add to that, we also have retention policies available within the data lifecycle management tools in Microsoft Purview. So what this does is it allows you to put like a blanket retention on your mailboxes or SharePoint sites, OneDrive for Business, or even Teams, as a matter of fact, right? Because there are several regulations that say that you need to hold the mailbox data for a certain period of time, like say 5 years, or maybe like your documents for 10 years. I'm just throwing numbers, but every regulation is different. So retention policy also behaves somewhat like hold. So David was explaining how the hold works in the back end, and even if the user deletes the information, it stores it safely within the back end so that it is discoverable in the future, right? So retention policies also can do the same. And if you are supposed to follow certain regulations, you want to hold the content at scale for a longer duration of time, you can use retention policies as well.
Nice. Good stuff. All right, I got more questions myself, but I'll give customer questions. So what is data spillage and what is e-discovery's role in dealing with it?
Ooh. I'll take this one if it's okay.
Yeah,
Data spillage, that's a fun one. They're not really, hopefully not that frequent, but it's something that we have to deal with regularly. In short, a spillage incident is where data ends up somewhere it's not supposed to be. So, for example, if I'm, trying to email Danny over here, and I accidentally send a sensitive document to a different Danny, which, everyone's kind of aware of the risk of that happening. And this other Danny's like, oh, I just got a bunch of HR information. What in the world is this? That's a situation for data spillage. Like I said, it's really a situation where something ends up somewhere it's not supposed to be. And obviously, a lot of the severity of that depends on the sensitivity of the information. If I'm sending out a soccer schedule and send it the wrong Danny, that's a lot different than, sending payroll information. And one of the things that we see customers using with eDiscovery is basically the ability to search and delete this content. So with eDiscovery, you have the ability to basically find that message that was sent incorrectly, and then you can actually run a command to simply purge it. So it was in Danny's mailbox. Next time Danny checks, it's gone. Where'd it go? Well, with eDiscovery, you have the ability to run that search and delete to basically remediate a data spillage incident. It does require a special permission set on top of the already special permission set. So there's another permission that you have to basically do that actual delete action. But it's a great tool for basically remediating these spillage incidents where you have someone that sent something they really shouldn't have. And along those lines, kind of in parallel to data spillage, there's also security incidents where, hey, we have reports that a bunch of malware made it into our organization, or a phishing email that wasn't caught for whatever reason. We need to see who all received this email, and we need to delete it. That's another thing we can do via eDiscovery that a lot of people don't really know about. So we do have that ability to not only deal with data spillage incidents, but also do security remediation too.
Good stuff. Man, this is like mind-blowing stuff. All right, there's another question. What if I want to pass the buck and delegate responsibilities to other people in my company so I can transfer the risk? I think, Steve, this was you earlier, right?
See, it's not just me. I'm not the only one thinking about this. Obviously, the audience is too.
So I think we covered this one, but anybody want to give a quick summary of what we talked about?
Yeah, I can take this up. So pass the buck and delegating the responsibilities, right? So we touched a little bit about that earlier. So we provide several role-based access control permissions within the Microsoft Purview portal, and you can assign people to various role groups that may have different roles, right? You can also create your own custom groups if required, and you can pick and choose what kind of permissions they need to have within the eDiscovery portal. So this way you will be able to delegate roles to different people like your legal folks, or to the public records team, or maybe the IT folks, or any other people who are responsible for doing those eDiscovery cases. If you guys are okay, I'm going to quickly share my screen because this is a very commonly asked question, right? So let me share my screen here.
Wow.
Demo.
Yeah, are you guys able to see it? Okay, so you can see that there are different roles that are available. It can go very, very granular. You can provide like permissions for a person to create cases. You can also allow people to search the content using complex queries. There's a special permission for performing custodian management. Custodian means it's the person that you are searching for, like the data, maybe an email mailbox. Maybe there's a person called John Doe and you're trying to find his mailboxes, all the data in OneDrive Business, his Teams chats, all the teams that that person is part of. So you can see there's a special permission to perform this custodian management. There's also permissions to export the content, put the content on legal hold. Hold was, covered by David. He talked about how this hold works, right? Then there's also detailed permissions like reviewing the content, reviewing it, search and purge, again, which we discussed about data spillage, right? Where you can purge the content if required. You can see this, you can get as granular as possible. And there are different role groups that have these specific roles assigned to them as well. So we talked about e-discovery manager and administrator, right? This is the role group that contains the most amount of permissions. And this e-discovery manager and admin can literally, do the e-discovery case management end to end, right? But if you want lower permissions, or you just want to invite legal folks to just review the content and not really do anything else, like creating cases or other things, you can assign them to the reviewer group. And again, you can create custom groups and pick and choose the roles that you want so that you can delegate the permissions accordingly. And where do you do that? You go to your compliance portal and you can see the permissions over here. So this is where you get to see all the different roles for various solutions within the Microsoft purview. So you can go to the e-discovery manager group and assign your folks over here. Let's wait for it to load. So you can assign the e-discovery managers. They could be like people from different departments, right? So you could have an e-discovery manager from department A, department B. So assign them over here. And you could have one e-discovery administrator who can see all the cases and manage all the cases. So you can probably add your global admin or some other IT admin over here so that they can perform those responsibilities. So yeah, that was like a very quick high-level overview of how you can delegate the permissions.
Nice.
Danny, are you enlightened? You learned some stuff today?
I think after this show, I'm unenrolling my device and just going to use pigeons and U.S. Postal Service from now on.
Hey, this used to all be done with paper and pencil too. So.
I can imagine. I can't tell you, like, the places I worked prior to Microsoft, past lives, like boxes of just documents.
Yeah.
I can't imagine, like, the workload that somebody would have to get if they got a subpoena to go find X out of a mail. Or, I mean, even with it being electronic today, it's searchable, but it's still, it seems like a good level of effort to find exactly the needle in the haystack or groups of things you need. So it seems like a lot of work, even electronic. So I can't imagine it not being electronic.
I mean, just think
listening.
All of us. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
For those of you listening via podcast, the information that BB just displayed on screen can be found at aka.ms/ediscovery permissions, EDISCOVERY PERMISSIONS.
Excellent. So, just real quick, for everyone that's listening to this right now, imagine how many emails you have in one of your mailboxes, because you probably have multiple mailboxes. So just imagine how many emails you have in just your business email address. Now, that's just email. Now imagine how many documents you have saved, either locally or to the cloud, through, OneDrive for Business, SharePoint. Now imagine how many chats you sent with one of your, chat tools like Teams or Skype for Business. Imagine how much digital information is out there. And it's basically these e-discovery managers' jobs to make sense of all that content, to find one little specific thing out of all that huge digital estate. It's a lot of work, but luckily through e-discovery Premium, and other tools like we mentioned Preview earlier, it makes it a lot easier to try to make sense of that incredible amount of information that's out there. So it's a great product. I'm very happy and privileged to be able to support it. And just know that that number of emails you have is growing every single day, and it's not stopping. It's growing exponentially. So, it's really important to understand, how we can use these tools to respond to things like subpoenas or, GDPR request or any kind of request that you're having to deal with.
All right, so moving on. I got right now. Just hearing everything we're talking about makes me my IT pro nerds spidey senses going off of how much data that is. But anyway, I'll digress down that hole all day. But all right, so another question: has MS considered adding an option to place data rights management controls on data exported from Purview, time bombs, custody tracking, things like that?
David, would you like to take that?
Sure. There's different ways of doing that. It's kind of a complex question there. We don't really have necessarily a time bomb for content that you're exporting out of eDiscovery. But you can definitely have kind of different options on how you want to export the content and controls around that. Once again, we mentioned RBAC earlier. You can actually control who has the ability to export content, which is a big one. Not everyone has to have the ability to export content. If you want people to be able to do searches and review without actually having the ability to export, that's something you can do and take advantage of. So kind of one of the recommendations around controls about, exporting is making sure that only the people that should be able to export have that capabilities. We have basically abilities, I've seen people basically having virtual machines set up to where you can run exports to a virtual machine. That's a really locked down environment that you can't send to other places. But, if you're interested in kind of quote unquote time bomb solution, we'd love to get your feedback about what that means to you and how that can be helpful for your organization.
Yep. And I also want to add here that, in eDiscovery standard, usually customers used to export a lot of content outside the organization, right? And they used to put that on CDs or maybe USB drives or network file shares and share that huge amount of content with their legal teams. So that was like a risky option because you have a lot of content, you're pulling that outside Microsoft 365, and you're then sharing that with third party or maybe your own legal team. But now with eDiscovery Premium, what we are doing is you pull the content, and instead of like pulling it outside Microsoft 365, you place that inside a review set. And then you invite collaborators into that review set. So basically your data is still secure, right? You are reducing the amount of risk. And your data rights management, like if you applied sensitivity labels on the content, if you mark that content as confidential, all those rights management will still be preserved within that review set. And then your legal team can come into that review set and they can look for the information. They can do their sorting of the content, or they can say, yes, this is relevant to my case. This is not relevant to my case. So basically, you're trying to reduce the risk by keeping the content in place. And you're just pulling out the relevant content from that huge amount of data. So maybe you have collected around 100 GB of content, but you're just pulling out maybe a few megabytes of data that is relevant to that case, right? So eDiscovery Premium will help you reduce the risk and solve this, challenge that was mentioned in the question, right? That taking time bomb and things like that. So that is one thing to consider.
Yeah, no more of this. Hey, Danny, I need you to hide this hard drive in your desk drawer. Make sure it's in your desk drawer there, Danny.
Put it on the plane. Put it in the black box with me when I'm doing the fly.
So we read these comments that you guys chime in on the various platforms: Twitter, LinkedIn, Tech Community, and yes, Erica, who works for the state of New Hampshire, has made a very hilarious comment: chasing down pigeons for discovery. Had to do that. They usually die before they can be used as evidence. So.
That is hilarious. That is hilarious. Steve, what else you got? I know you had some other questions too. I can't be the only one with a ton of questions.
Well, the big thing that we get a lot of times are questions about product and product design all the time. And it looks like we have a few of those coming in from the tech community. Does Microsoft envision RBAC for content search? We can control access to search results, but not the queries themselves. I guess that's an idea.
So that kind of goes into the world of compliance boundaries. We spoke about this earlier, but it's a way of basically saying, hey, I want this e-discovery manager to only be able to search the data for group A. And due to privacy concerns, we don't want them to search the data for group B. So as far as actually doing the actual, the KQL, the queries, that's the way you can basically control what you can search on. Now, as far as actually being able to control the query itself, not sure too much about that one. Would need kind of more information about that request. But when it comes to actually running a search, controlling where you can search, compliance boundaries are your best friend there.
Well, all right. So what's the difference between standard and premium?
I guess I could take that one, BB, or?
Sure, go ahead.
BB did a great job kind of talking about some of those differences earlier. Probably the biggest fundamental difference is the ability to have a review set. So an e-discovery standard, e-discovery standards are great. Well, first, I guess we should talk about this. E-discovery standard is an E3 tool. So you mentioned G3 and E3 earlier on. E-discovery standard is a E3, G3 tool. It is a very basic search, hold, and export tool. That's what it does. It's good at its job, but it's a basic search, hold, and export tool, or search preservation and export tool. E-discovery Premium does everything that e-discovery standard does, but adding a lot more content. And I get this a lot. Hey, e-discovery standard is, Premium is just kind of standard with some additional bells and whistles that you turn on if you have E5, which e-discovery Premium is an E5 solution. But e-discovery Premium is a very different product. It does pretty much everything differently than e-discovery standard. For example, it does processing different than e-discovery standard. It has the ability to advance indexing. So if you're worried about the quality of your indexing using the native indexing of Exchange, SharePoint, and OneDrive, e-discovery Premium adds additional indexing on top of that. It does a lot of things that e-discovery can't just because of how it's architected. For example, a big one is cloud attachments. Everyone, you know what the cloud attachment is, Danny and Steve?
I'm going to say no. This sounds like a trick question.
So everyone's kind of familiar with traditional attachments, right? Where, I'm sending an email to Danny, I pick a file I want to send, and it sends a copy of that file to Danny, right?
Well, yeah, if it's a 50 meg PowerPoint document, you don't want to necessarily do that. Yeah,
exactly. There's some big limitations there. One, Steve just mentioned it. These files take up a lot of space. If I'm sending a 50 meg PowerPoint presentation to 20 people, it starts adding up. Mm-hmm. Another one is, unless you're using something like Microsoft Information Protection, once that message leaves my mailbox, can't do a lot about it, right?
It's gone.
It's out of my control. So if Danny's outside my organization and I send Danny that PowerPoint presentation, Danny can kind of do whatever he wants with it. That's a problem. Another thing is collaboration. I'm sending out the same file to 20 different people. Now there's 20 different versions, and we don't know which one is the real version and which one's not the real. There's a lot of issues with attachments.
Yep.
Cloud attachments are something that we released to basically make that a little bit better. So instead of sending the actual copy of the document, now we're just sending a link. So you've probably used this before, I hope.
Yep.
But now it looks like a regular attachment to the end user, but when you click on it, it doesn't open a copy. It opens the original.
The original.
So you can share out the most massive file that you have, and it doesn't matter because you're not actually sending the file. You're just sending a link. And in e-discovery world, that's an issue because if I'm running a search and I get that email, I don't have a copy of the attachment. All I have is basically that link that I can't access. So one big value of eDiscovery Premium is due to how we architected it. We have the ability to actually not only give you that email with that link, but actually go out and grab a copy of that file too. So it looks like a regular attachment. So that's one big advantage of Premium, is the ability to basically deal with things like modern attachment. Another one is Teams. Teams is one of the hardest things to run searches against, because it's Teams content. That little chat that we have, that Teams content is stored everywhere. It's stored in email. It's stored in OneDrive. It's stored in SharePoint. It's all over the place. And eDiscovery Premium can help you make sense of all that and make it a lot easier to identify and search on that Teams content. So there's a big, long list of things that basically separate eDiscovery Standard and Premium. Review sets, probably the number one. Having the ability to actually, not just export that content out of your organization and have to go through it, outside of the cloud, but being able to go through that information directly in your eDiscovery case to find really that needle in a haystack. That's a big one. But there's a whole lot of features like custodian management, the ability to put holds easier, the ability to locate information easier, support for teams, cloud attachments. The list goes on that eDiscovery Premium can bring to the table just because it's a more powerful product.
What about file formats and searching? Not that I would want to work.
That's a great question.
Try to get around this, but what if I was sneaky and didn't put things in Word or PDF files, and maybe I typed up something and saved it as a JPEG or a GIF?
You remember how I mentioned that advanced indexing earlier?
Yeah.
That's a big selling point of eDiscovery Premium, is because eDiscovery Premium, through that advanced indexing, can support additional file types. And as you just mentioned, it can support optical character recognition. So we can actually take an image and pull that text out of the image so we can search it. So that's something else that we can't do in standard. So that's a good call out. One more thing that's important to note: encrypted information. I don't think I see anything else growing as much as I see encryption growing right now through things like sensitivity labels. We've gotten a lot better at encrypting our information, which is fantastic. But we still have to search that information. And luckily, eDiscovery Premium has advantages over eDiscovery Standard when it comes to searching encrypted information. So that's another one that's becoming more and more important to our customers. And having the ability to search across encrypted content in eDiscovery Premium is a big value.
Are there capabilities in eDiscovery like we have in the real analog world where there may be relevant information, but there also may be information that's not relevant, that is of a personal or private nature? And so we take the little black magic marker and we start, blacking out all of the stuff that we don't want. We call that redaction. Do we have the electronic capabilities of that as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, Steve, I was almost about to say this, when you brought this up. So I think for review capabilities, eDiscovery Premium provides the review set, right? The review set is like a star feature. I usually like to call it that way because the legal teams love it, right? They can come and categorize the information within the review set. They can say, yes, I want to mark this as relevant to my case, or I want to attach metadata properties with it, right? And I can decide what those metadata properties are. You can also leverage hundreds of metadata properties from your emails, from SharePoint, and other content that is collected within the review set as well. So it makes categorizing the information very, very easy, which is like the biggest challenge for legal folks. And then next comes redaction, annotations, right? So we provide those capabilities as well. So if there's any sensitive content, you can redact that information, you can save that content as PDF, and then you can export that content outside your review set. So basically, whatever was done manually earlier, or if customers were using third-party products, etc., now they can do all that within the review set itself. So it eliminates that manual sorting and filtering by providing all the capabilities out of the box within the review set.
And redacting stuff's pretty fun.
All right, we got 5 minutes left. Steve, let's try to squeeze in this question. So, quick question. This will be the last question, and we'll go ahead and close. What can an IT pro do? What can an IT pro use as examples to influence leadership to get in front of and protect better against insider risk and potential lawsuits?
Good closing question.
It is.
That's an interesting questions. Yeah, often we talk about cybersecurity, ransomware, and phishing attacks from external user, right? We also need to provide equal importance to protecting content in Microsoft 365 and on your endpoints from the risks that are posed by insiders, right? So these insiders could be malicious insiders like disgruntled users or terminated employees or employees that have like submitted their resignation. They may want to take content with them, right? Or insiders that are genuinely ignorant and do not follow the security best practices, and they may copy their content where they're not supposed to. So your insiders already have access to your sensitive data. And if proper data protection and data retention policies are not in place, then you can imagine how easy it is for an insider to share a highly confidential document with someone outside the organization. There could be different ways of doing this. So, example, an insider could just email and share the confidential document outside the organization. Or they may just print the sensitive document and take it with them. Or they may copy the sensitive content to a USB drive or to a Bluetooth device. They can just upload the sensitive content to their personal Gmail or personal Outlook or maybe personal cloud drives like Google Drive or OneDrive. So it just takes a few clicks for the sensitive content to leak outside the organization. Now, data leaks might lead to penalties or fines. It's better that an organization is proactive when it comes to protecting their data and mitigating risks. Now, Microsoft does provide several solutions so that you can proactively fortify your data security. So you can automatically identify your sensitive information, where it exists, you can protect it, you can govern it, and you can identify different risks that are associated with it. In fact, we have a solution in Microsoft Purview. It is referred to as Microsoft Insider Risk Management. And this solution can correlate millions of signals proactively that are performed in Microsoft 365 and even your endpoints. And you can configure it to get indicators from HR systems, from physical badge access systems. And it can identify users who are performing risky sequence of activities. And then you can mitigate these risks as soon as possible. This insider risk management solution is seamlessly integrated with our e-discovery premium solution as well, so that your legal teams can quickly start investigating the risky users. So example, if you have identified a user as a risky user, your SOC team or the investigation team can create a e-discovery premium case from the insider risk management tool itself. And all the relevant content is shared with the legal team so that they don't have to start from scratch, and then they can mitigate the risk as soon as possible. So yeah, I mean, these are some of the points I would use to discuss with a CISO or like a CIO and get in front of data security and protect the data better from insider risks or any potential lawsuits.
Awesome. That's a great way to end this. Thank you very much, BB. Sounds like these tools could protect Danny from himself, even.
No.
We're coming up on the top of the hour. This is once again a great episode. I'd like to thank our guests, David Robbins and Bhavana, BB, as we call her. And for Danny Guillory and myself, thank you very much. And don't forget to tune in next month where we have our Halloween episode, Spooky Endpoint Dreams. What's keeping you up at night? What are your endpoint management nightmares? Thanks again.
Thanks,
Thank you very
everybody.
much.
Oh, yes. Yeah.